Kelders van Geheime spoilers for August 2026, the final reckoning of the month that changed Soebatskloof forever. The walls of Subatloof have kept secrets for decades, but this month, this final fateful month, those walls would come crumbling down. As the Cape Winelands basked in the last golden days of winter, the families who called this place home stood on the edge of oblivion. Some sought redemption, others craved revenge, and a few simply wanted to survive. For Tjoppie Marais, the fury that had been simmering beneath the surface finally boiled over. When he unleashed his rage upon Veronique, it wasn't just anger that spilled out. It was years of betrayal, of lies half told and truths buried deep. The confrontation left his sons, CJ and Marco, scrambling to contain the damage, forcing them to call a family meeting that would reshape everything. But Veronique wasn't the only one with secrets spilling out. Debbie Lee, caught in the crossfire of Tjoppie's emotional warpath, demanded answers. She gave him an ultimatum that cut to the bone: choose what he wanted, or lose her forever. And while Tjoppie wrestled with his demons, Sandy stumbled upon a revelation that would send shockwaves through the entire farm. Brenda was pregnant, and Sandy, never one to keep a secret for long, held the match that could ignite a firestorm. Down in the workers' quarters, Napoleon was making moves of his own. His sudden announcement to Stil Piet came as a thunderclap, leaving the old man reeling. Something was shifting beneath the surface of Subatskloof, and everyone could feel it. Veronique, still grasping at fragments of her shattered memory, found herself drawn to a dusty Marais family portrait. The faces stared back at her, familiar yet foreign, and she knew, with a sinking certainty, that she was looking for something she wasn't supposed to find. The truth is a poison that spreads slowly, infecting everything it touches. When a person faints at work, the truth follows close on the heels. And this week, no one could stay upright. Sandy, ever the protector of her daughter, cornered Tjoppie with a warning that echoed through the corridors of the Marais manor. She saw the cracks in his resolve, the way his attention drifted to Debbie Lee, with a desperation that bordered on obsession. But Debbie Lee was growing weary, tired of the drama that seemed to follow them like a shadow. Back in her room, Veronique's mind was awakening. Piece by agonizing piece, her past was returning, not as a comforting memory, but as a waking nightmare. The woman who had once been Dawn was re-emerging, and with her came a hunger for answers that would not be denied. CJ discovered Brenda's pregnancy through the cruelest of accidents. Sandy's loose lips. His fury was volcanic. How could everyone know except him? The betrayal cut deeper than any knife, and he stormed through Soapie like a wounded animal, demanding explanations that no one seemed willing to give. Brenda, her heart heavy with the weight of a secret that was never meant to be kept, watched her husband spiral. She had hoped for joy, for celebration. Instead, she got accusations and anger. The baby that should have united them was now driving them apart. While CJ raged, Veronique was uncovering truths far more disturbing. The more she dug, the more she discovered about her past, and not one of those discoveries brought her comfort. The woman she used to be had been a stranger to herself, and now that stranger was knocking at the door, demanding to be let in. But even in the midst of chaos, love was finding its way through the cracks. Debbie Lee, still reeling from her confrontation with Tjoppie, gave Sandy permission to dream, permission to plan the wedding they had always wanted. It was a fragile hope, but it was something to hold on to. Marco, ever the peacemaker, tried to bridge the growing chasm between his brothers. He saw the way CJ's pride was destroying him, the way his refusal to forgive was eating him alive. But some wounds are too deep for words, and some betrayals cannot be healed by good intentions alone. There are moments when Subatskloof seems to breathe again, when the old house sighs with contentment, and the vineyards whisper of better times. This was one of those weeks. Love was suddenly everywhere. Couples who had been at odds found their way back to each other. The air itself seemed thick with possibility, but beneath the surface the currents were still dangerous. Brenda, her pregnancy now public knowledge, and her marriage teetering on the edge, urged CJ to make amends with Matthew. It was a gesture of grace, a bridge built over troubled waters. And Debbie Lee, ever the pragmatist, asked Tjoppie to extend the same olive branch to Junior. If the Marais men could set aside their grudges, perhaps there was hope for all of them. Veronique made a show of burying the hatchet with the family that had once welcomed her, but the gesture felt hollow, like a performance designed to hide something darker. The Marais family watched her warily, uncertain whether to trust the woman who had caused them so much pain. Matthew felt the walls closing in. Perhaps it was time to return to London, to escape the tangled web of Soebatskloof. But Tjoppie had words for him, hard truths that cut through the young man's defenses and forced him to reconsider. Veronique, desperate to reconnect with her sons, found herself blocked at every turn. Gershwin, ever the puppet master, had other ideas. He watched her like a hawk, waiting for the moment when she would slip, when her guard would drop, and he could tighten his grip. But it was Tjoppie who heard something he shouldn't have. A whisper, a rumor, a fragment of truth that lodged itself in his mind like a splinter. Debbie Lee saw it in his eyes, the way they clouded over, the way he withdrew. Something was coming, and she couldn't shake the feeling that it would tear them all apart. The end was approaching, and everyone could feel it. Marco and CJ, still reeling from the chaos of the previous weeks, decided that what Subatskloof needed was a celebration. They approached Sandy with an idea, an engagement party for Tjoppie and Debbie Lee. But Sandy's vision was grander than they had anticipated. Her ideas spiraled into something wildly extravagant, leaving Marco reeling. Brenda watched Gershwin's manipulation of Veronique with growing unease. She saw the way he twisted her mother-in-law's fragile mind, the way he isolated her from everyone who might help. Veronique, trapped in a fog of confusion, felt the walls closing in. The farm she had once known was becoming a prison. And then, the floodgates opened. Veronique's memories came rushing back like a tidal wave, drowning her in a sea of recollection. She remembered everything, the lies, the betrayals, the sacrifices. But instead of seeking help, she buried it all, terrified of what would happen if anyone discovered the truth. Gershwin sensed her vulnerability and pounced. He demanded an answer, a decision, a commitment to his plan. And when she refused, the fight that erupted between them shook the very foundations of Subatskloof. Words were exchanged that could never be taken back. Veronique, in her desperation, said things that cut Gershwin to the bone, and in doing so she created a monster. His desire for revenge was born in that moment, cold and calculating and utterly consuming. He lured Hermine back to Soebatskloof with CJ's stolen phone, a bait too tempting to resist. When the Marais family gathered, uncertain and wary, Gershwin delivered his blow. He told them everything. Who Veronique really was, what she had done, the darkness that lurked beneath her carefully constructed facade. The revelations were devastating. Hermine, her face a mask of controlled fury, listened as Gershwin laid bare the sins of the woman who had infiltrated their home. And when he was finished, she devised a plan, a final solution to the problem that had plagued them for far too long. She informed the entire family of their next steps, her voice steady even as her hands trembled. This would be the end of Veronique Marais. One way or another, it would be over. Brenda, caught between her loyalty to her family and her growing understanding of Veronique's pain, confronted her mother-in-law. It was a brutal, honest exchange that left both women shaken. And then, CJ summoned Veronique to the big house. The reckoning had finally come. And then, the end. Hermine gathered the family and delivered the final word. They had done the right thing. There was no other choice. Octavia, her face pale but resolute, made a decision of her own, a sacrifice that would ensure their actions could never be undone. When Debbie Lee opened her eyes, it was 2 months later. The world had moved on without her, and Subatskloof was forever changed. But even in grief there was celebration. The engagement party that Marco and CJ had planned finally came to pass, a grand festivity that brought the sister and Marais families together in shared joy. Tjoppie and Debbie Lee's news was cause for celebration, a beacon of hope in the darkness. The whole family gathered, laughing and crying and remembering the love that had brought them all together. For a single, perfect moment, Subatskloof was at peace. But somewhere in the background, a figure kept watch. Eyes that had seen everything, that remembered every secret, that carried the weight of all that had come before. A quiet observer, waiting for the moment when the past would rise again. Because on Subatskloof, the secrets are never truly buried. They are merely waiting to be unearthed. The final episodes of Kelders van Geheime air on ETV and E-Extra until August 14, 2026. Will peace finally come to Soapie? Or is this just the calm before the storm?